There we go. There we go. Okay. Um, it has been a wonderful morning being here with you. I have to say, it's just, it's fun to see the church be the church in all of its goofiness and all of its praise and all that we do together as church. It's really been terrific to see how you live that faithful life out together as a congregation. I've noticed a lot of green and gold behind me here all morning, so I noticed that the back of the banner, at least over here, is purple. So that's very ecumenical of you. Understanding. Oh, I'm in dangerous territory. Okay, I did not wear blue for. So I'm from Chicago. So there we go. I have to say, God's love is more expansive than we can even imagine. Even maybe purple and green. I'm Dan Rift. I am the director for ELCA World Hunger and Disaster Appeals. So let me unpack that a little bit. ELCA is you and others who are in congregations that are part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. So that's about 9,600 congregations in the U.S. and in the Caribbean. There are about 1.5 million Lutherans who will be worshiping as you are in ELCA congregations over the course of this weekend. And we are part of a large family of churches called Lutheran World Federation. That's our communion, LWF. There are about 80 million Lutherans in LWF, the Lutheran World Federation. And we act together not only in common theology and understanding of who it is that we are as children of God, in this kind of teaching that God extends to us in grace, there's nothing that we can do to deserve it, but we also turn then in this life of grace to one of dedication. We also are joined together in the common work that we do in sharing one another's lives, which means that we are in mission together. And it means when there is joy to be spread, we are in joy with one another, but when there's hardship that is before us, we are also facing that hardship together. And it is out of that kind of sense of vision, it's out of the Psalms, that we are in fact drawn to one another and work together, especially in times of disaster, but in the long term around issues of hunger and poverty as well. One of the things that really gives us character, one of the things we're known for is the way that we respond to hunger and poverty in the world. And this isn't just in the world, it's also in this country. So if you go to an ELCA congregation, you will see in almost every congregation something that's going on to address hunger in the community. Whether that be locally by gathering up of food, or whether that be by a garden, a community garden, whether that be by a job training program or a place for people to be able to stay overnight, or partnering together with other congregations or other agencies, whether it be the social service work that we do together through Lutheran Services in America, Lutheran Social Services of Wisconsin in your case. We are a people who understand that as a matter of our faith, we are called both to service and to care for those who are around us, that this world indeed is not all that God would want it to be, and it is our privilege to be able to make it more in keeping with the kingdom of God. And so it is that we are drawn together. You support as part of that the work that we do together as ELCA. So I want to talk about that a little bit, what it is that we do together when we are responding to hunger and in times of disaster. And the frame of that is really this passage. I mean, we heard today about Abram. It's easy just to slip right over to Abraham because that's, of course, how we know him better. But Abram was the beginning of the story. Abram and Sarai, they were a couple and hearing God's promise, in this case, promise of offspring, and then living accordingly. Not always perfectly, but accordingly, to follow in God's call. And over time, they were made a great family. And so I can't listen to this without, I'm sorry, this is neither Congo nor Macarena, not nearly. But I can't listen to this without recalling and calling to mind this camp song. So some of you who've been to camp or maybe VBS might know this song. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know the song? many children through the generations. We are a people drawn together by our commonality. There are many things that are happening in the world right now that would divide us by our differences. We're reminded here that we are drawn together by our commonality, our common heritage. In this case, we are children of Abraham, not only we followers of Jesus Christ, but also our Jewish neighbors and our Muslim neighbors, all tracing their spiritual heritage back to this commitment of Abraham to follow where God would lead, and the promise of God to make Abraham and Sarah a blessing, for a purpose, to be a blessing to the world. We are, in many places, able to work across these faith lines, across these lines of division, especially in time of relief, especially in the ways that we come to one another's assistance, by this common heritage of being children of Abraham. But our living in the promise of God is not something that is simply a passive thing. And so I love this little song, because "Let's All Praise the Lord" leads to action. And the work that we do in response to hunger and in times of disaster are part of that action. So you started here in your own community. You are the ELCA's response to hunger here in your community. The way that you gather up food, the ways that you share it with one another, the community meals that you help support, the ways that you partner with other congregations and with other organizations in Milwaukee, the ways that you're part of the Lutheran Social Service efforts here in Wisconsin, and in the ways that you gather in gifts for Lutheran World Relief. I mean, the ways in which this is mobilized, the material gifts, and your financial support as well for the ways that we work together. So as you're making those gifts to ELCA World Hunger, or in times of disaster, through your congregation, many of those gifts are given. And this is a congregation that is faithfully supportive because of your intentionality to the work that we do together. And I know this takes intentionality, it takes a determination, it takes a decision that in fact you will make this part of the life and ministry of this congregation, and that you personally will be supporting that kind of work. And so I want to thank you for that. And I want to tell you a little bit about the difference that it makes when we decide to turn the praise of the Lord into action for neighbors and in this world. I've been telling different stories to different worship services today, so if you're going to hear a couple stories, they'll overlap with some, but it gives you a chance to go talk with your friends who might have attended a different worship service and ask, well, what story did you hear? I want to start with this kind of question of, how do people know us in this praise of the Lord? I mean, this is why I think it is more than just an extra ministry that we're doing over here about hunger and in times of disaster. It is a witness to who we are and what it is we stand for. Presiding Bishop Elizabeth Eaton, that's our bishop in the ELCA right now, she's really helping the church wrestle with this question. How are we known? What distinguishes us? And it is very much in the service and the praise. She said, there's no question if you go to Syria and ask who are the Lutherans, they know very well. Syria is this, or into Jordan. Jordan is this country that has been welcoming all these Syrian refugees. If you go to Jordan, the Lutherans are the ones that helped to set up the refugee camp. But more than that, if you go to Jordan, where there now are several thousand, 100,000 refugees, the Lutherans are the one that run the Peace Oasis. That's this area of the camp where the kids can come to be safe in an environment of peace and can start to learn with one another. If you ask who are the Lutherans, who are the Christians here, they are the people that bring peace. There's a country in Africa, Malawi. It's a small country. It's landlocked. It's not by any of the oceans. It has no coastline. It has a lake. It's on Lake Victoria. And It's one of the poorest nations in the world. There's a very healthy Lutheran church there, Evangelical Lutheran Church in Malawi. If you go to communities in Malawi and you ask, well, who are the Christians, who are the Lutherans? You will hear different things in different communities, because the way we respond to hunger is first to work with the communities as they are identifying both the problems and the potential viable solutions to what it is that's causing hunger and poverty in their midst. That way we're turning from short-term assistance to long-term sustainable actions. You might go to one community that I had seen, and they would say, well, the Lutherans are the ones that have brought the goats to us. Because the Lutheran Church in Malawi and the Lutheran Church in South Africa got together, and after a couple tries, they were able to breed this goat that produces about 2.5 times the meat of a traditional goat in Malawi. I like to call them the Lutheran super goats. So who are we? We are the people that have turned lives around. I had a woman who had to be in her probably 50s, looked like she was probably in her 70s or 80s if she had been in this country. And showed me, and she said, this is where I used to live, which was a mud hut. And she said, because of these goats, this is where I live now. Very simple, one-room, baked brick house with a metal roof where she and her sister, both widows, lived. The difference because of the Lutheran goats, this sustainable change. They might say they're the ones that enabled us to be able to feed our own children. In Malawi, we do not provide long-term feeding programs through the Evangelical Lutheran Church. We will provide temporary food for up to 1 year, and then bring in agriculturalists to help the community to learn how to increase the yield in their own community. Who are we? We are the people who bring the chance for folks to be able to feed their own children, a sense of dignity, a sense of promise. You can trace it around the world in the many places where we work. In Chile, one of the poorest countries in this hemisphere, at least the people who are in the indigenous population of Chile, they are the ones that have been left out. That's where the Lutheran Church is. We've been privileged to help train over 400 deaconesses of the Lutheran Church in primary health care. Who are the Lutherans? They're the ones that are bringing healing. Even in this country, so for ELCA World Hunger, about 30% of your gifts for ELCA World Hunger stay in projects in the United States and in work in the United States, about 70% internationally. If you go to Flint, Michigan, which we now have heard about for many, many months about the lead problem in the water in Flint, Michigan due to the mismanagement of the water system. If you'd gone a year ago, you would have heard that the Lutherans are the ones where people were going to the Lutheran Church to get water, even before it became a national story. Or the Lutheran Church are the ones that were helping people to come together and speak to the governor and to their senator about the problems around them. The Lutherans were the ones that were speaking truth in the midst of times of trouble. If you go to Sacramento, California, and you ask who are the Lutherans, well, they'll tell you this story in one neighborhood. One of the most violent neighborhoods in this country, there had been a 6-year-old that was caught in the crossfire. And the Lutheran Church there said, enough, we have to do something. And so they got together in their building and they looked across their parking lot to the vacant lot that they owned across the parking lot and said, what can we do with that vacant lot? And so they came and asked to be able to get some help to establish a community garden there. The community garden grows lavender as a place where, and then the youth group sells it for the church as a fundraiser. They turn that into mission. They have small plots for first arrival families to the United States who are able to grow familiar vegetables. They can have a large garden area to grow vegetables that are then given as fresh food to the food bank. But they also put in benches in this garden, not really knowing what a difference that would make, because it became a neutral zone among the gangs in this neighborhood, a place of safety. When I was there, I met a woman who clearly was agitated, anxious. She said, my doctor says that I have to get out of my house at least 10 minutes every day. This is the only place I can come where I feel safe. Who are the Lutherans? They are the ones that are bringing peace in that neighborhood. And we have the privilege of doing that and working with this synod and working in this community as well in a number of grants and community gardens. We are a people who are woven together by our common action in the support that we provide and in the ways that we are out in active right arm, right foot, left foot, praising God by the opportunities that are before us. It's not new, but it is instrumental. It changes the world and it changes us. Who have we been? We have been the children of the one who heard the call of the promise of God to go and would make of him a great nation, a blessing that would be a blessing to the nation. Who have we been? If you asked in the 2nd century, who are the Christians? And you asked the Roman leader Justinian, who is infamous for his persecution of the Christians, he would not use that name. He just called them the Galileans. Those impious Galileans, he would say, who feed not only their hungry poor, but ours as well. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the ways that you intentionally choose to support the work of helping neighbors near and far, people you may know and people you may never know, through their hardest days and most difficult times. The ways that you are committed to being a people of peace and healing, of possibility when the world says that there is no possibility, of hope when the world simply says hopelessness. I want to thank you for the ways you intentionally do that together in your gifts to ELCA World Hunger, in times of disaster to Lutheran disaster response, in the ways in which you have done that locally, but even more the ways that you make that difference spread across the world. Thank you. May God be the glory.